The first thought that comes to mind when we talk about frugality is often one of living without luxury or pleasure. But frugality, contrary to popular belief, doesn't mean living in scarcity or depriving yourself of a good life. True frugality is about spending with awareness and prioritizing what truly matters. During the Great Depression, for example, families didn't have many options, but they knew how to make every penny count. And this didn't just mean surviving, but living in a balanced way, with financial wisdom and smart choices. Spending less isn't synonymous with poverty, it's a sign of a healthy financial mindset. During the 1929 crisis, families learned how to cut out the unnecessary and focus on the essentials. They not only survived, but managed to stay afloat during extreme hardship. Contrary to what many believe, living with less can lead to a richer life, as it allows for greater financial freedom and less anxiety. And the best part? It's possible to learn how to be more frugal at any time, even today, by applying these timeless lessons. If you're wondering how to apply this in your daily life, the key lies in controlling your financial habits. Intelligent. Frugality isn't about living with nothing, but about understanding that every expense should have a purpose. By cutting unnecessary costs and creating a more effective financial plan, you'll see a significant impact on your financial life. And the good news is, you don't need to be an expert to get started. When the Great Depression hit, many families found themselves living on the edge. But despite the harsh circumstances, they didn't just survive, they found creative ways to stretch. Every penny, every dollar counted, and families began to look at money from a different perspective. They understood that small, seemingly insignificant savings could add up to big improvements over time. In today's world, many of the strategies used back then can still be applied, allowing us to adopt smarter spending habits. One of the main strategies was to avoid unnecessary purchases. People became experts in identifying needs versus wants, which is something many of us overlook today. For example, instead of buying new clothes, families would repair old ones or swap with others. The focus was on making the most out of what they had, which is a practice we can all benefit from now. Whether it's cooking at home instead of dining out or fixing things around the house, the key was maximizing value while minimizing waste. But it wasn't just about being frugal, it was also about adapting to the times. For example, bartering became a common way to get by, especially in rural areas. Families would exchange goods and services, which allowed them to obtain what they needed without spending money. Today, we might not barter in the traditional sense, but there are still ways to adopt this mindset by finding community-based exchanges or sharing resources. It's about thinking creatively to make your money stretch as far as possible, even in tough times. During the Great Depression, people adopted a minimalist approach to life, learning how to make the most of what they had. This mindset wasn't just about owning fewer things, it was about embracing simplicity, avoiding waste, and using resources in the most efficient way possible. People became more mindful of their consumption habits, avoiding unnecessary luxuries, and focusing on what was essential for survival. The minimalist lifestyle of the Great Depression was less about deprivation and more about finding fulfillment in less. One of the cornerstones of this lifestyle was repurposing and upcycling. Items that were no longer useful for their original purpose were turned into something new. For example, old clothes were mended or transformed into quilts, and leftover food was creatively reused in other meals. This was a key aspect of financial survival during tough times, but it also sparked a sense of pride and resourcefulness. Today, this philosophy can be applied by embracing sustainable practices, such as buying second-hand, reusing materials, or upcycling old items. Minimalism also extended to the way people viewed their possessions. Instead of buying new, families would repair, recycle, and reuse whatever they could. This wasn't just about saving money, it was about reducing waste and making the most out of limited resources. In today's world, minimalism can help us combat consumerism and make more intentional choices with our money. By focusing on quality rather than quantity, we can prioritize what truly matters, whether that's investing in experiences or spending on long-lasting products. In the aftermath of the Great Depression, people learned to live with less and, more importantly, waste less. This was a time when every penny counted, and making the most of what you had was not just a financial strategy, but a survival tactic. The idea was to avoid unnecessary expenses and focus on what was truly important. Today, we can still apply this mindset by being more conscious of our spending habits and making smarter financial decisions. One way to avoid waste is by tracking your spending. When you know where your money is going, you can identify areas where you're overspending and cut back. It's about being intentional with your purchases, not just buying things out of habit or because of a temporary desire. A simple habit like making a shopping list before heading to the store or cutting out subscriptions you no longer use can make a significant difference. Small adjustments in spending can lead to big savings over time. Creating intelligent financial habits also means planning for the future. The people of the Great Depression didn't know what the next day would bring, so they saved as much as they could when times were good and adapted when times were bad. Today, we can do the same by building an emergency fund, saving for retirement, and setting clear financial goals. These habits, rooted in frugality and foresight, not only help us avoid waste, but also ensure long-term financial security. Frugality is more than just a practice, it's deeply connected to human psychology. Often, we spend without thinking because of emotions, societal pressures, or simple habits. During the Great Depression, people were forced to rethink their spending habits, as every purchase had significant consequences. Today, we can learn from this by understanding the psychological triggers that lead us to overspend and how to overcome them. A big part of this is emotional spending. Whether it's buying something to lift your mood or making impulsive purchases because of stress, emotions can often drive us to spend money we don't have. One way to combat this is by taking a step back and reflecting before making a purchase. Ask yourself if the item or service is truly necessary or if it's just a temporary desire. Simple habits, like waiting 24 hours before buying something, can help curb these impulsive spending habits. Another psychological factor is societal influence. Advertisements and social media often create a sense of urgency or the fear of missing out, which leads us to spend on things we don't need. In the Depression era, people learned to resist this kind of pressure because they simply couldn't afford it. Today, we can apply the same principle by focusing on what truly matters to us, rather than chasing trends or accumulating things to impress others. Mindfulness in spending not only improves our finances, but also leads to greater contentment and financial peace. The habits of frugality and resourcefulness that were born during the Great Depression continue to serve as valuable lessons for us today. Even though times have changed, the core principles remain relevant for anyone looking to build a solid financial foundation. One of the most notable habits was the focus on budgeting and careful financial planning. During the Depression, families had to stretch every dollar, and those who survived and even thrived were the ones who planned ahead and knew exactly where their money was going. Today, this same approach to budgeting is more important than ever. With the rise of easy credit and online shopping, it's easy to lose track of our spending. But by tracking every expense and planning ahead, you can avoid unnecessary debt and set yourself up for long-term success. There are many tools available today, like apps and budgeting spreadsheets, that can help you stay on top of your finances. The key is consistency and making budgeting a habit, just as families during the Depression did to ensure survival. Another important habit was the emphasis on saving. In the 1930s, people didn't rely on credit cards or loans to make purchases. They saved for what they needed. This mindset can be incredibly beneficial today as well. By making saving a priority and cutting back on unnecessary expenses, you can build a safety net for the future. Start small, but make sure to set aside a portion of your income for savings. Even if it's just a few dollars a week, those small contributions can grow over time and provide financial security in case of emergencies. During the Great Depression, debt was a major burden for many families, and it was one of the reasons why so many struggled to make ends meet. In times of crisis, the first thing people did was stop relying on credit. Instead, they focused on cutting unnecessary expenses, selling items they no longer needed, and doing whatever they could to get by. The idea was simple: if you didn't have the money, you didn't spend it. Today, the lesson from the Great Depression is still incredibly valuable. In times of financial instability, whether due to a personal crisis or a global recession, one of the first things you can do to protect your money is to avoid accumulating more debt. Stop using credit cards to cover everyday expenses, and instead, focus on paying off what you owe. Not having to make interest payments frees up more money for savings and essential expenses. But protecting your money also involves thinking ahead. Building an emergency fund is one of the most effective ways to ensure you're not caught off guard during tough times. In the 1930s, families that survived the Depression had some form of savings to fall back on, even if it was just a small amount. Today, financial experts recommend having at least 3 to 6 months' worth of expenses saved in case of job loss or unexpected events. Start small, but make saving for an emergency fund a priority. The Great Depression forced families to become incredibly mindful of their spending. When times were tough, they had to decide what was essential and what wasn't. Luxuries were the first to go, and many people had to learn to live with only the necessities. This mindset wasn't about deprivation, but rather about recognizing that true happiness doesn't come from material things. It comes from relationships, experiences, and living within your means. Today, we can apply this lesson in our own lives. With rising costs and uncertain economic times, it's more important than ever to make smart consumption choices. Start by asking yourself, do I really need this? Or is it just something I want? If you can't justify a purchase based on long-term value, it might be time to let it go. Instead, invest in experiences or things that contribute to your well-being and growth. Additionally, the rise of minimalism shows how valuable simplifying your life can be. Not only does it save money, but it also helps reduce stress and clutter. In the same way that families during the Depression focused on buying only what was necessary, we too can learn to cut out the non-essential items that weigh us down financially and emotionally. It's about doing more with less, a lesson that's just as relevant today as it was in 1929. During the Great Depression, many families found themselves overwhelmed by debt. With banks failing, jobs disappearing, and savings evaporating, debt became a heavy burden. However, people who survived financially didn't just sit back and hope for a miracle. They took action. They learned how to manage their money more effectively, prioritize their expenses, and find ways to reduce debt, even in the toughest times. In today's world, the idea of protecting your money during a crisis is just as important. Whether it's an economic downturn, personal financial challenges, or global uncertainty, knowing how to safeguard your finances is key to weathering the storm. Start by building an emergency fund. The rule of thumb is to have at least 3 to 6 months' worth of living expenses saved up, so you have a cushion when things go wrong. Another key lesson from the Depression is the importance of living below your means. While it's tempting to borrow money or max out credit cards during hard times, this only deepens the financial hole. Instead, focus on reducing expenses, cutting back on unnecessary purchases, and paying down any high-interest debts. By taking small steps to reduce debt and build a financial safety net, you can better protect yourself during uncertain times. In times of financial crisis, we often face the tough question, what should we cut from our budget, and what is truly necessary? The Great Depression taught people that smart consumption was crucial for survival. Many families had to make choices about what to keep and what to let go. The key to surviving difficult times was focusing on needs rather than wants, and making every dollar stretch further. Today, we face similar challenges, although the nature of consumption has changed. Instead of rationing food or clothing, we often find ourselves battling with subscriptions, impulse buys, and lifestyle inflation. The trick is to assess what truly adds value to your life. A monthly subscription you don't use? That's an easy cut. A daily coffee habit? Maybe it's time to start brewing at home. By identifying non-essential expenses and cutting them out, you'll be able to allocate more resources to things that truly matter. It's also important to recognize the difference between instant gratification and long-term satisfaction. In the long run, it's not the things we buy impulsively that bring lasting joy or security, but rather our ability to save, invest, and manage our finances wisely. Use the lessons of the Depression as a reminder to spend smarter, cut unnecessary costs, and focus on what's truly essential for your well-being and financial health. The Great Depression showed us that frugality isn't about scarcity, but about smart choices. It's about knowing what truly matters and making conscious decisions with your money. As we face our own financial challenges, we can draw inspiration from the past and apply these lessons to our lives today. By practicing frugality, cutting unnecessary expenses, and focusing on long-term wealth building, we can create a strong foundation for financial success. Ask yourself, how much of my spending is driven by impulse, and how much is truly essential? Are there areas where I can practice frugality to build a more secure future? The key to surviving any financial storm is to be proactive, not reactive. Use the wisdom from the past to guide your financial decisions today. Now that you have these insights, it's time to act. Take control of your finances, implement smarter habits, and transform your financial future. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to keep receiving valuable tips that can change the way you manage your money. Let's build a stronger financial future, one smart choice at a time. What if I told you that a secret from one of the most difficult times in history could help you save money today? The Great Depression, a period of widespread financial hardship, forced families to rethink how they handled their money. While many were struggling, others discovered ways to make their finances survive and even thrive during the toughest of times. The practices they used back then could provide the foundation for your own financial stability in today's world. In a time when frugality was a necessity, these families learned valuable lessons about managing their finances, saving money, and avoiding waste. But here's the real twist. These principles are not just about cutting back, they're about being strategic with what you have. So, how can we apply these strategies in today's world where debt and overspending are common? Let's dive in and uncover the timeless financial lessons of the Great Depression.